everyone, this is Ira Wolfe again, Success Performance Solutions, with another tutorial about recruiting in the age of Googlizations. With pressures increasing on attracting enough qualified workers, enough qualified applicants, and turning them into qualified workers, one of the things that more and more companies seem to be paying attention to happens to be recruitment marketing. And a critical part of recruitment marketing is getting jobs in front of people. And one of the ways that you do that is that when people are searching for jobs, they'll pull up Google or Indeed or Bing or Career Builder or ZipRecruiter, and they obviously your jobs need to be seen near the top of those search engines. So one of the questions that constantly comes up, or one of the things that I've recently discovered, is that many recruiters, HR professionals, small business owners, hiring managers don't really understand how jobs get listed in these search engines. So I want to do a quick tutorial about how that happens. Search engines like Google, and I'm going to pay most attention to Google because they do make up about 90+ percent of all the searches that are out there. Google search is about 60% and YouTube, which is owned by Google, makes up the rest. So if we look at a job search engine like Google, there's a couple different parts. One is the crawler, so they have things also known as spiders and bots that go out and they search the web for new content. And if you post a job today, sometime minutes, hours, or days after that, it will be discovered by Google, and then they collect all the data that's in there and put it into their large database, which is called an index. So when you hear about indexing, what it's important to do is when you post something, whether it's a sales page, a product page, or a job listing, it's important that it gets indexed. And then from there, what Google does with it, or any of the other search engines, including Indeed, they have a secret sauce, a secret formula, and that's called an algorithm, and it determines the preference that they're going to give. And your goal should be that it's given top preference and shows up number one, or if not number one, number two or three on any job listing, because after the top three listings, the visibility and the click-through rates just plummet. So how does this all work? Well, as I just said, the spiders search the web for the new content. The information from the page is saved to the index. The algorithm then evaluates the content. And that's the tricky part, because it used to be in the early days that you can just post a job and it would be seen, it would be visible. But now, because of the amount of content, and also because users are much more deliberate, they're just flooded with different information, they're only going to pay attention to the best content, and Google's the best at doing this, but their mission is to make sure that not only do they collect all the information in the world, but they only deliver what the user wants. And it's not perfect, but they're getting much better at that. And then the final thing is that it just doesn't get posted once. Your website, your career site, your jobs listing will be revisited over and over and again. And the more that you refresh that, the more current content, the more new content you have, the more often these spiders will visit your site. So it's important not to put up just one job listing or or have a web page that there's nothing changed on it for years at a time. So all this sounds pretty easy, that if you have a job listing and you optimize it and Google or Indeed does find it and then they post it on their site, and I mentioned Indeed, but again, it could be Career Builder, it could be ZipRecruiter, it could be any of these other sites, then you're basically home free. But we all know that's not true. So your job listing ranking depends on how many other jobs with similar content are listed. So if even though the wording might be slightly different, if the keywords and the structure and the offering and what these spiders read is similar, then you're thrown into a kind of the pot, whether that would be certified nurse assistant or sales representative or software engineer, whatever that might be. Now you're competing against all the others, and you know how competitive that is. And then Google or any of these other job boards determines the content relevance. They're trying to deliver the most relevant content to that user. So how does that happen? Well, there's a couple different categories. Some you might be aware of. Most of these you're probably not. So the first is this quality of content. Number one rule is do not copy and paste the job description. Most job descriptions are not optimized for the web. They're great for your legal department, for your handbook, for describing responsibilities, performance management, but they aren't necessarily always they're not an easy read. And again, they're just not optimized for the search. So even though it may be highly relevant, the content just may not be favorable in the way that Google or the other engines view it. But beyond that, it also is highly dependent on the website structure. This means if you've had a website built 2-3 years ago or older, and sometimes even a year ago, depending on how easy it is to navigate, the code it's using, it should be using HTML5 or some other current best practices language. So those are all important. But these two areas are critically important. Last year, Google implemented 2 updates. One was for page speed, and they do give priority to the faster pages. So its rule of thumb is under about 3 seconds to load a page, and I'm sure that's going to continue to fall. But under 3 seconds should be adequate right now to be able to compete. But if you have exactly the same job posting up as your competitor and they're loading in 1 second and you're loading in 3.5, then they'll probably be given the preference. And the second thing is that your job listings, not only your job listing, but the career site and your website need to be mobile friendly. Oftentimes it's called responsive. It needs to be responsive on multiple platforms. Easy to read. You don't have to pinch and squeeze and move things around. And many sites are not. Many sites, their websites are, but their career page is not. Sometimes an ATS, if you're using an ATS, may not be mobile responsive, mobile friendly. So there's a lot of variations. But because Google now gives preference to your mobile site over your desktop version, it's really important. So even if you copy and pasted the number one job description, the job listing from your competitor, and you used exactly that same content, but your structure, your page speed, or your responsiveness was not up to par, your jobs will not be listed near the top. There's also 300 plus other factors. Google is constantly adjusting this algorithm, and you need to pay attention to that. But for now, these are the 4 things that need to be in order for you even to not only show up on the first page, but to even have a chance at being near the top. So what can you do to ensure a top ranking? One is do not copy and paste your job descriptions unless they are optimized. But even if they are optimized, it's very unlikely that anybody's going to sit and read a 1 or 2 page document. So best thing is to tell a story. You need to optimize each and every job listing according to search engine optimization standards, using keywords, meta descriptions, alt tags for images. Many of those terms may be unfamiliar to you, but you need to start understanding what they are and how to use them. And then you need to work closely with your marketing and IT departments to ensure your website complies with the current structure standards, your website and page speed is fast. Remember, under 3 seconds is okay now, but it's probably going to fall shortly or get much faster. And your website, career site, and job listings are mobile friendly. And this is probably one of the biggest areas or biggest problems that I see. Finally, your job should be listed in Google for Jobs. That requires something called schema. It gets a little bit more complex. You can click on the link below and learn a little bit more about that. I do have an online course, but my suggestion would be first things first. Make sure you're meeting all these other standards, because that will, even if your jobs are listed in Google for Jobs, they're not going to be ranked high enough if these other areas are not taken into consideration. That's it for this tutorial. I appreciate you watching. If you have any other questions, let me know. If there's any other subjects you would like to have, just reach out to me on email, on YouTube, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, any of the social media, or just visit our website and leave a comment.